Good morning, friends. Welcome back. Greetings from here. Greetings to you there. Signing in this morning from Portland, Oregon. Sharing greetings too from IMC headquarters, mothership in Redwood City, California. We'll get underway in a couple minutes here. In the meantime, hello to people signing in the chat, and warm greetings to everyone else as well. Good morning and welcome if you're just joining. We'll get started in just a minute. In the meantime, welcome from IMC. And thank you to people signing in, sharing where they're signing in from and the weather. Yeah. Oh, good to see people coming in. And welcome to everyone who's out there not participating in the chat. And now it's 7 o'clock. Welcome, everyone. Good day to you wherever you are. Thank you once again for coming together to practice together. And in this way, supporting one another's practice. It's a sweet thing to participate together. And I feel the warmth even at this odd internet-mediated, Zoom-mediated distance of the warmth of the IMC community, the IMC global gathering, global fellowship. We'll continue today exploring the teaching of the six sense spheres. Today we arrive at the sixth sense, the mind. And I think sometimes we think of the mind as being an obstacle to our practice, occasionally even the enemy. And this is particularly true as practice begins and gets underway. And yet, with time in, sitting with the mind, being with the mind, appreciating the mind, we can recognize that the mind plays a really important role in finding our way to freedom. And we help the mind create new habits. We help the mind incline naturally as second nature toward freedom and away from suffering. And we can't do this without the mind. So the guided meditation today, I've called in the outline for the week, keeping freedom in mind. There may be times when this seems like a practice about suffering. That's where we start. That's frequently how we come to the practice. But it's really a practice about freedom. So let's take our meditation postures. Doing this rebalancing that I've been stressing this week in the instructions for the meditation period. Adjusting our posture, finding our way into our posture, bringing attention to our posture so as to encourage a balance between alertness and ease, full presence, awake presence here and now, but in a way that's relaxed, open, non-judgmental, accompanying ourselves, opening ourselves to our experience, not pushing anything away, not holding anything close. And for many of us, using the breath as an anchor in the here and now of our lives. Returning to the breath, returning to some aspect of bodily experience periodically when we find the minds become tense and tight, contracted around thought, around an emotion. We come back to the breath. And here in the breath, in the middle of the body, we can find a place of ease and a place of freedom. Been stressing this week that the breath itself represents a sensory sphere. It's a way we make contact with the world through the sense of touch, through the sense of interoception. And it's a object lesson, a model of how we can be fully involved in the world of sensory experience and yet free at the same time, free from clinging, free from stress, free from unease. And so when we return to the breath in this half-hour sit, today we can do so with the sense of returning to a place of freedom. And by doing this with each return to the breathing, we keep freedom in mind. We want to keep our mind inclined toward the goal of our practice. And we can remind ourselves of that each time we return to the breath. Maybe you can notice it this way. We sort of wake up periodically, noticing that the minds become contracted or tight around something. The thoughts of the future, thoughts of the past, thoughts of other people, thoughts of ourselves. Or maybe we have this sense that the mind has wandered away or leapt away, rushed away, and we pull it back to here and now. Or if the mind feels tight and contracted, we open it back up gently to the breath. There's no reason to hurry when we do this. We'll have plenty of opportunities to do it again. We don't need to rush back to the breath. And as we move back to the breath, we can notice the contrast. The world we were wrapped up in there for a minute. A familiar thought spiral, a worry, a plan, a memory tends to be more complicated, frequently moves at a quicker pace, and tends to feel slightly less balanced than the breath. And when we return to the breath, we have an opportunity to connect with these characteristics of the breath, these natural, inherent qualities of breathing. It tends to be slower, tends to be uncomplicated and simple, tends to be balanced. We can recognize this as a place of freedom. And with each return, we can keep freedom in mind. So, this practice of the six sense spheres encourages us to keep freedom in mind. This world that we know through the six sense bases is, in Buddhist teachings, the world. And if we can be free, if we can find a way to be at ease without pushing and pulling, without preference in this play of senses and sense objects and sense consciousness, we can be free in the world. And the meditation provides a way to keep freedom in mind. This practice points onwards toward practices in which freedom plays the central role. This is its place in the teachings, is to sort of move us from maybe a bit of an obsession with suffering to an orientation toward freedom. We can do this in the meditation every time we return to the breath. Just notice that this place can be free. We can be aware here in a way that keeps us fully present and also free. And this freedom that we can find in the practice can be shared with the world without diminishing it. We can give it all away with confidence that it comes from an inexhaustible source. And maybe going forward from this week, sharing some of the benefits of the practice, can be aware how it can build our confidence that there's plenty more freedom where this came from. So we can share it easily with a free, open hand. So welcome again, everyone. Thanks for meditating together. And somehow in closing out that guided meditation, I was reminded of something quite important about this six sense spheres teaching. I may or may not have mentioned this on Monday, but if so, it doesn't hurt to repeat it, which is that this teaching of the six sense spheres is placed right in the middle of a set of teachings in the Satipatthana Sutta, the sutta about establishing mindfulness, the key discourse in the mindfulness practice in many ways, has this middle pivotal position between two exercises or two practices that really focus on understanding suffering, the five hindrances and the five aggregates. And on the other side, the seven awakening factors and the four awakening insights. So in a way, it helps us move toward keeping freedom in mind, as we did in the guided meditation. Orienting ourselves to the goals of the practice, the ultimate objective, hate to use the word objective and goal, but the ultimate orientation of our practice, what brings us to practice in a way. We may think that we come to end our suffering, but in that is a wholesome desire and aspiration for our own well-being, for freedom from suffering. So today, the fifth of these 5 days, focused on the six sense spheres, I'll talk about mind, the sixth sense in Buddhist phenomenology and Buddhist thought. And it can be challenging, I think, to think of the mind as a sense organ like the other five that we've talked about. It's fairly easy to conceive of, say, the sense of smell as a sense sphere. There are olfactory receptors, there are molecules in the world, and when brought together, there's an arising of a consciousness of scent. Maybe it's more challenging to think of the mind as an organ that meets objects of attention and thus emerges an arising or emerges a consciousness of cognition. So it's a little bit more tricky to talk about even. But think of it this way for a minute. Among the millions of possible ideas, words, images, thoughts, memories, the mind latches onto one at a time. And this latching on is mind consciousness, knowing what's known, to put it that way, put it another way. And the objects of the mind's attention, mind objects, include all sorts of familiar things: internal thoughts, feelings, stories, concepts, memories, abstract ideas like the self, as well as internal and external sensory data that's processed by the mind. So inner conversations, ideas, self-identity, worries, plans, joy, sadness, anger, right? And physical sensations, body sensations, pain or pleasure. The mind does a lot of weaving together of information from the other senses in a way that create mind objects or take the form of mind objects. Mental objects or mind objects also include the concepts and similar that we use as focal points for the meditation, the breath, which is an abstraction, actually. We focus on the sensations of the breathing. The objects of contemplation from the teachings that include things like the six sense spheres, for example. These are also objects of mind. And you might notice that there's a little bit of a difference. When we focus on the teachings as mind objects, they can have a role in furthering our practice, deepening our meditation, moving us toward greater ease and freedom in the world, strengthening mindfulness, strengthening wisdom. So, interestingly, the mind is an ally in our practice. I said at the outset of the guided meditation that sometimes we see the mind as something to get past, or an obstacle, an impediment, a challenge, even an enemy to the practice. The mind plays a central role in furthering our practice and moving us toward freedom. So the particular sort of thought that we work with in the meditation, that we work to attenuate with mindful attention to all the things that are going on, we sometimes refer to as discursive thought, this kind of thought that moves from one theme to another and never really seems to result in anything particularly useful, being lost in thought, being there and then, as opposed to here and now. Thought in which a huge percentage, 90% and above, are thoughts about ourselves that have I, me, and mine in the middle, and thoughts that are familiar, repetitive. Discursive thought includes the stories that make up a big part of our way of thinking. Our practice helps us move sort of below these, this discursive thought, into other aspects of our experience, including other ways that the mind can take wholesome objects that help move us toward greater freedom. I never find myself any more frustrated with the mind. In fact, I sometimes, when the mind is busy in meditation, when it's throwing up solutions to problems or trying to figure out something, making a plan, I feel grateful. I get that the mind is trying to do what it sees as its job. It's trying to help. It's trying to provide useful solutions. I frequently, before I return to the breath, I'll sort of say, thank you. Appreciate the help, appreciate the idea. I'll keep that in mind. maybe I'll return to that. I'm not always honest with the mind. I might not have any intention of going back to that, but I'm just like, thank you. I'm put that to one side. I'm going to go back to the breath right now. Of course, we can't get through life without a mind that does these things. And so some appreciation for all that the mind does for us can be a really useful way to hold it easily, lightly in the practice. It's not our enemy. We're trying to cultivate other aspects of mind, other capacities of mind, other competencies of mind that are less developed. So what we're doing in working with the mind and the objects it takes, you could say, is I don't know that there's a specific order to this, but that we're creating a place of rest, something I've emphasized in the guided meditations this week, where the mind can rest from that discursive sort of generation of things, which is part of what it usefully does. We want to reduce the power of certain patterns of thought that are deeply ingrained, certain ways that we react to pain, pleasure, all sorts of inputs. We want to sort of reduce the power of the old ways we do things, the reactive patterns, so that we can cultivate new mental habits. And one way of thinking about what we're doing is replacing one set of mind objects with another. Getting in the habit of keeping freedom in mind, making sure that we use the mind's ability to be with us in the world, to keep us focused on where we want to go with our practice, what we want to bring to the world as a result of our practice. And this is where for example, we bring attention to all sorts of aspects of knowing our experience deeply, our inner life, including our intentions, our deepest held intentions, our aspirations, the way wanting and aversion get in the way of those intentions. We bring our attention to the teachings, waiting for teachings to land. I use a lot of synonyms. I sometimes string together a series of phrases that mean much the same thing because I know from my experience that sometimes one phrase will land and another won't, but waiting for mind objects to emerge that advance our practice, that deepen our meditation or move our practice toward greater freedom. And the mind, as I wanted to sort of demonstrate in the meditation, the mind can take these wonderful qualities of the potential of our practice as objects, freedom, compassion, the sharing of the benefits of the sharing of the merit of our practice. These two are objects of the mind in a way that deepens our practice. So mind is tricky to work with. Maybe that's why it's left to the sixth sense or to the fifth day of 5 days of 7 a.m. YouTube sharings. But there are also advantages to the mind, bringing attention, bringing awareness, establishing mindful attention, mindful awareness in the mind as it creates, as this relationship between mind object, and mind consciousness arises. And the principal one that comes to mind at the moment is that some of the other senses seem to fix things in time fairly easily. We see something and we imagine that it's solid, that it'll stay that way. This can be true of things we touch too. We have a sense of something. My hand's not a good example because it's moving around and it's warm, it's changing. But if I touch the screen over here, it feels hard. With the mind, it's really obvious that mind objects, and mind consciousness, that each of the three parts of this triad, that they're all impermanent, unreliable, constantly changing. It's very difficult to keep anything in mind for more than a very short period of time. We can keep returning to something and kind of hold it in mind for a period of time. But just being with mind, letting mind, being observant of how mind works and how mind consciousness arises between mind and a mind object is an object lesson in seeing impermanence. So this can, of course, be very useful for developing the wisdom of our practice. Mindfulness of this aspect of mind as a sensory organ, and with its object and the consciousness of an object, a sensory sphere, can be a direct doorway into finding freedom. So the practical aspect is anytime we find ourselves lost in discursive thought, be it in meditation, be it at a holiday party, when we find ourselves lost in story or in second arrows, as we sometimes say, we can return to center. We can return to the home, in the home for the holidays that we created yesterday, right? In the field of the body's being in the world, sitting on a chair and breathing. We can return to, in meditation, the breath, or elsewhere in the body where there's a sense of wholeness, tranquility, and we can be free there. We can be in this world of sensory experience. In the sitting meditation, almost all these senses are playing some role. Maybe sense and taste a little less, but they're there. But all six sense spheres are active and interactive as we meditate. And as we find ourselves aware of that in a way that doesn't have preference, doesn't have pro and for and against, doesn't have grasping, clinging, pushing away, aversion, doesn't have a lot of self-imposed, we're not making it into me or mine. We can be free in this world, the only world we know, in the only way we know it, through these six senses. I remember the first time I read in a book of Buddhist phenomenology that we only know the world through these six sense doors. I found that kind of astounding, that all we know, this entire incredible fabrication that happens that allows us to move through the world and do important things and less important things, all of this is a reflection of just six sense doors, six sense of potential objects in the world, and six arisings of sensory consciousness. It's pretty remarkable. And it's a place in which freedom is available. Freedom is there. Freedom exists there as this kind of inexhaustible source of well-being. So in closing for this week, I encourage you to keep this practice close to heart. Keep it with you during the holidays when the senses are activated in a way that sometimes we may not be as aware of as we are during the holidays, and share the benefits of practice. And if you lack any confidence that there's plenty more where this freedom came from, please accept a little of my confidence, those of my IMC teaching colleagues, in the freedom that's possible in this practice. So take care all, and see you again. And happy holidays if you're celebrating holidays. Take care.